Hello and welcome to the Extra Podcast. I'm your host, Neil Murray, and I'm joined on the show by Alex Marr. Alex, how you doing?
Not bad. Yourself?
Yeah, good, thanks. Great to have you on again. And we've also got Andrew Southwick. Andrew, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm not actually here because I'm actually supposed to be working. I should have come up with a fake name.
Oh yeah, so it's Andrew.
I could come in with a fake name and put in an accent or something, but yeah, it's good to be here.
I mean, as the one editing this podcast, I'll see how kind I'm feeling afterwards in the edit process, whether I edit this out or not. No, it's good to have you both on. Thanks for being here. Well, let's get straight into it. We've had a lot of Scotland coverage on the site, and we also have done the last few podcasts on Scotland as well. The Scottish Cup returns this weekend, but I think we're going to touch on something that we actually haven't had time, or just because we have focused on Scotland, we've not actually touched on it at all, and that is Hearts and Robbie Neilson in particular, given what has happened over the past 7 to 10 days. First of all, they had what's arguably maybe the worst result in their history, losing to Broda Rangers in the Scottish Cup, and then that was followed up by Queen of the South's first win in nearly 60 years at Tynecastle at the weekend. So that in turn has led to a small France protest. There's been some Foundation to Hearts members reducing their contributions or even removing them completely. I guess I'll go to you first, Andrew. Is Robbie Neilson the right man for this job? Is the kind of treatment he's been given here a bit harsh, or really is it just not good enough how he's really been performing in his role and how his side's been performing?
Yeah, I think they kind of set themselves up for a fall by appointing him in the first place, because when they got rid of Craig Levein, I think they could have went for a big name then, and they took forever to appoint Daniel Sendell, and it seemed to be that delay was because they were convinced he was the right man. He then left in summer, and there was a bit of kind of confusion whether Stendhal wanted to go or whether he was never going to get to stay anyway. But to then, after kind of pinpointing this German manager who's going to bring high pressing, attacking football, completely change everything that Levein did, to get rid of him and basically bring in Robbie Neilson, who was just, the coach under Neilson, under Levein, learned under him, hadn't really done very much after leaving Hearts. And it just kind of seemed to be a bit of a safe hands, this guy knows the club, he'll get Hearts promoted, which is what's happened. Hearts are heading for promotion, but it was never an appointment that really made you think Hearts are going to step up here, they're going to really go up a level. So you kind of got what you expected. For me, I always believe every new manager should get at least 2 years. I think it takes that long to come in, especially if you're coming into a struggling club that's just been relegated. Come in, make your changes, put your stamp in the squad, start making, make all your signings in one transfer window. And the only reason I would say you shouldn't get 2 years would be if you're a complete disaster. Now, the Broda Rangers result was obviously humiliating. I wouldn't say this season has been a disaster when they're 13 points clear and they're going to get promoted. It has been poor, but I've heard Hearts fans say, this team will struggle in the Premiership, they're going to come right back down. Well, we don't know that yet. I mean, that's still hypothetical. So you can't really throw that at them. I mean, we don't know if they'll struggle or not. I mean, someone in this podcast, and I can't remember who it was, thought Livingston were going to be relegated and they've made the top 6. So, you might have a really good summer transfer window and they do well. But that said, as much as I'm saying it's maybe a little bit unfair, because in the sense of that's who you appointed, that's kind of what you get, what you see is what you get. I do think he should go, because I think it's the same situation as Neil Lennon and Derek McInnes. When the fans turn on you, that's it. You need someone very special to turn it around. As you said there, 200 fans have stopped their contributions to Foundation to Hearts. Another 200 have reduced theirs. There was a demonstration outside the stadium. It might not have been big in numbers, but that's because of the pandemic. And the thing as well, for Anne Budge as well, she probably stayed with Levein too long. And, you're kind of guilty by association when your manager's not really doing the business. So if she just sticks with Neilson and he doesn't do well next season, I mean, you've already seen the demonstration wasn't just against Neilson, it was against her as well. So I think Hearts will probably wait till the end of the season, let him win the league, and then I think they should probably look for someone in summer.
It's also a results-driven business, is the old cliche, but I mean, yeah, they're 10, 13 points clear. They're going to get promoted. He's going to do what he was asked to when he came in, but I guess, Alex, like Andrew's saying, is that enough really? Because there is that eye on. It's just a presumption that they would go back up. It was the same at Dundee United. It was the same Hearts the first time around, and obviously Hearts the first time around when he took them up in the Championship, they beat Rangers and Hibs quite convincingly overall in that table to go up. But you, as a Dundee United fan, you know firsthand. I was kind of working for Radio Tay at the time, so covered Dundee United quite a lot as well, and obviously I think he took over from Shaba Laszlo, which was a bit disastrous, but he couldn't get them up in that first season, even though he had quite a good run at it. And in the second season, in the end, by the time the season was stopped, they had romped it, but I don't think by any means they were hugely convincing. They would lose the odd game that they just definitely shouldn't have lost. And just before we came on, Andrew made a good point. I don't think there was that much of a kind of fanfare or kind of upset in the United ranks when he left. I personally thought there might be a lot more people annoyed because it was such a long wait for United to get back up, but it didn't seem like people were particularly bothered. I don't know, obviously you'll know better than me there, but is it a case of Neilson somebody who, when he's a big fish in a small pond, can deliver maybe what's expected, but he's just not that kind of manager to take a team like Hearts to the next step in the Premiership?
Yeah, I think he definitely is. He's peak Championship manager as it was. He can take, like you say, a big club in a small pond. He'd be like almost perfect for Celtic 4 or 5 years ago when they had no competition in the Premiership. That sort of manager who can just grind out results most weeks. But at United, even last season, he relied a lot on Lawrence Shankland and Nicky Clark to get United out of trouble. There was the game at home to Arbroath. United were 1-0 down with 5 minutes to go. Shankland gets 2 goals in stoppage time. United had some terrible results last season. Lost 2-0 to East Fife at home in the League Cup. Lost 4-0 to Queen of the South. And there was, after that 4-0 game against Queen of the South, there was a lot of people calling for Neilson's head. So the one thing as well, that United fans were, one of the reasons why United fans were so happy that he did leave was that United got 200 grand from Hearts in compensation. And that was probably one of the reasons why I don't think Hearts will actually get rid of him, because they've spent so much money on him. Yeah, it's difficult for Anne Budge to kind of justify spending 200 grand on a manager and then sacking him after he's done the one thing he was asked to do. So for him to be sacked going into next season, especially considering I think he's on a 3-year or maybe even a 4-year deal, it would be pretty pointless to sack a manager after 1 year after he's got promoted. But like you say, the fans have turned on him. Need to sell season tickets for next season, and you're not going to sell any season tickets if you've got an unpopular manager. So it's going to be tricky, whatever they decide to do.
You both make such good points, Andrew, as well. It is that thing where we've seen it with McInnes and Lennon, and how many times have you heard the season ticket comment Alex just made? And it's a weird one, particularly when you've got people taking, like the Foundation of Hearts actually stopping contributions or reducing them. That's huge. I mean, that is massive for a club that's just been newly relegated in the middle of a pandemic. And I'm not saying they're struggling financially or anything, but it's certainly something you just do not want happening. And I think it is just the Broda, and that week, the Broda result in the Queen of the South, are just a microcosm of some bigger problems this season. I mean, I think the last 10 games, they've won 4, drawn 4, lost 2, and in that time, they've scored 15, but they've conceded 11. It's just not good enough for a team that have the resources Hearts have at that level. I mean, they're at a point where they can sign players that are going to be better than anything any other team in that league can sign. They don't really have to worry about losing their players, probably. I mean, there's internationalists in that team. Where has it gone wrong, I suppose? Is it just a case of it's a club in decline and they've not maybe cleared out enough? Or how much does it fall at Neilson's door or Budge's door?
Yeah, I think they've been declined for 5 years, really. And obviously a massive part of that was Craig Levein, which they stuck with him far too long. When he got them to the first cup final, I think a lot of Hearts fans thought, right, Hearts aren't playing particularly well. It's not a particularly good season. He's managed to get to a cup final the perfect way. Obviously, he wins the game, wins the cup final, steps aside. But even if he'd lost, which they obviously did, it was time for him to go. And the fact that he stayed on. And the thing is, like, Craig Levein, I don't see anyone wanting Craig Levein. I don't see any managers knocking his door, try and get him, because any clubs knocking his door, try and get him, because he's not a manager who's had a lot of success. And when that guy's had such a big impact at that club, and they've had such a decline, you don't get rid of him and then bring his protege in, which is what Robbie Neilson essentially is. So it was a bizarre decision to take Robbie Neilson anyway, especially since Alex said there, he wasn't exactly smashing it at Dundee United. They got promoted, they got the job done, but I mean, is the Hearts this season particularly? Is this better than what Dundee United did last season? Like, what made him think that that's what he did at Dundee United, but he's going to come in Hearts and take it up a level? He's not. So, and if anything, Dundee United had been, because they'd been in Championship for a few years, they'd started kind of building. They had talents there like Shankland and like you said, but Hearts were a team that just relegated in a pandemic. It was going to a guy who still, to me, I know he's been a manager for a few years now, but to me, Robbie Neilson is still quite a rookie manager, and it was a massive job. And for me, it's a job that's far too big for him. I don't think Robbie Neilson is a top manager. I think he's, someone who probably should be managing a smaller club and still learning the trade. I think clubs like Hearts, Aberdeen, obviously the United since Alex here, these guys want people who are going to come in and take them up a level. I don't think Robbie Neilson was ever going to do that.
Are there direct correlations here? Are you kind of getting PTSD seeing this Hearts team comparing it to that Dundee United team? Because I think one thing a lot of Hearts fans I've kind of seen or who have commented on recent performances is they do lack that kind of tactical identity. And that run of the last 10 games I was talking about, they just struggle to create, or it's very, very rarely convincing. It's always hard work, and I think one of you've used the language before, is grinding out results, when really with the players and the financial clout they have compared to other clubs in the division, it just really shouldn't be happening. So are there kind of parallels for Neilson this season and last season at United?
Oh, almost definitely. Every time I hear Hearts fans talk about Neilson, I'm like, we warned you. I asked a couple of Hearts fans today about what they were thinking of Neilson, and they all said pretty much one word: turgid. And that's exactly the same when he was at United. But the only difference was he signed 17 players when he was at United, 11 of which in one window that didn't, and half of them have left already because they weren't particularly great. He doesn't really seem to know. He seems to know that, obviously, if you sign quality players like Nicky Clark and Shankland, or if you have quality players already like Levein Boyce, you can beat inferior opposition. But the tactical identity at Hearts and at Dundee United was basically give the ball to your best player and hope he scores and does something special. Which, in the Championship, when you're playing part-time teams like Alloa and Arbroath, you can get away with. But he won't get away with it in the top flight. He'll get ripped to shreds by definitely Old Firm, probably Hibs as well, or Levein if they're still in a good place next season. And one of the most frustrating things was at United was the lack of width in attack, and it seems to be the same at Hearts. That's the signing of GMS was probably one that a lot of people thought, right, they finally overcome that, but GMS seems to have not really worked out. I'd say I think the Championship's not really suited to his style of play. And then they've gone for the Armand, I can't pronounce his last name, Nanandule, I think it is. And he's a good physical presence in the box, but doesn't seem to be a striker that would do particularly well in the Premiership. So again, it just seems like a lot of these signings, recruitment is everything in football, and a lot of these signings seem really short term and don't really seem to be addressing the key problems at Hearts. And I can't really see how they're going to be able to address this unless they have another overhaul in the summer, which is going to be expensive. And Hearts, like every other Scottish club, are going to be really low on cash.
Yeah, it's a really good point. Yeah, Andrew, I was just going to say, I mean, obviously, I know you've got a point to make, but just on top of that, how much do the players have to take a bit of responsibility here as well? Because on paper, you look at that squad and there are still good players dotted throughout that, particularly at Championship level.
Yeah, the point I was going to make, I'll just answer your question first. The players, I think Craig Levein was obviously, he couldn't really go full throttle on sports film, but he was kind of making the point that he watched the Queen of the South game and players just, there was no reaction at all from the Brora Rangers game. Real lack of pride. And, again, we're kind of talking about Celtic and Aberdeen, but that was kind of the big problem with Celtic. You just kind of thought at some point Celtic are going to start motoring this, they're going to start playing for us 10 in a row, and they never seemed to have that same desire that Rangers did, and it seemed apparent that a few of the Celtic players didn't want to be there. Certainly from watching Aberdeen, it's been apparent that there's been real lack of leadership. It seems to be the case as well. Hearts, I think it says a lot that your captain, Berra, that I think when your leader's struggling for form, and it's pretty obvious he's going to be going into this season that he's no longer good enough, that players kind of they lose a bit of, I wouldn't say respect for him, but it's just it kind of becomes a problem for the team, and that team just doesn't have the fight at the moment. But the point I was going to make, just following up from what Alex was saying there, Brian McLaughlin was interviewing Robbie Neilson after I can't remember if it was after the Roar game or after the Queen of Salt game, because both of his post-match interviews seem to be pretty much the same. But he said to him, what he obviously said, what do you think of the result? And he's like, unacceptable, we can't accept that, Hearts. And he said, so what are you going to do to change it? And he went, we need to get better. And it's just like, well, water's wet, mate. He sounded like a guy that didn't really know how he was going to change it. It just seemed to be, I'll just go to the change room and I'll shout at them and tell them it's not good enough, and then I'll go and ask Anne Budge for money to spend in summer. Because, like you say, Guy Mackay-Steven was a big signing. He wasn't always the most consistent players, but he should be getting a hell of a lot more of him, considering they're playing in the Championship. You look at the team. Jamie Walker should be a decent player still, and I think I'm not going to pronounce his name. I'll let Alex pronounce his name, but he's actually done okay goal scores wise, I think. But that's you look at that squad. It's not, there's certainly weakness in it, but it's not a really bad squad. I mean, if that was in the Premiership and we were doing a preview of the Premiership, you'd probably look at that squad and think, well, they should be pushing at least for the top six. So they should really be doing a lot better in the Championship, but I just don't really think Neilson knows what to do with it.
I mean, Alex, you kind of mentioned you don't think he would get the boot just from a financial perspective, and if he's going to get them up, which he will, he'll be given a chance. And is it a case of maybe that if he needs, it's so imperative he starts next season in the Premiership well, and if he doesn't, then that's maybe when you'd think Budge would maybe act quite quickly, given what happened with Levein. And I guess just to tag on to that, is there anyone you think would be a good replacement? I mean, the main two I've kind of seen batted about Hearts fans is Alex Neil. I don't know how realistic that is, given he must have been earning quite a fair whack down south. And the second one, which I'm sure Andrew will be delighted with, is Derek McInnes.
I don't even think he needs to hit the Premiership, hit the ground in Premiership running. I think he needs to start the League Cup campaign brilliantly. They need to get out of the group, because you only need to look at Ian Cathro. He was sacked after he got knocked out of League Cup group stages. However many managers that is ago now. 4, I can't remember. And that will be really interesting, because obviously League Cup's worth a lot of money to clubs, and that was something he really failed at United, and he failed at this season with Hearts. They lost to Alloa in the League Cup, and like I said, they lost to East Fife last season with United. If you look at potential candidates, I would say maybe even someone like John Robertson. He'd be popular with the fans. He's done a good job in Inverness, although he's had family issues as of late, so he might not be willing to move and to take that job. But there's not. I don't really see what they're going to gain by having someone like Derek McInnes or Alex Neil, who will both be on massive wage packets at Hearts. It'll probably just be maybe more of the same. It's a bit too much of a risk. So that's also part of it. The one thing that Hearts don't want to do is go straight back down. And if you end up going for a left field candidate like they did with, say, Daniel Stendhal before, that could just spell disaster, and they could find themselves in November below Hamilton in the league, or below whoever's still in the Premiership, and 5 points adrift, and that's the last thing they want to happen. Neilson probably will keep them up next season. Might not do much more than that, but you'll get them probably 9th in the league at worst, and that's probably the minimum Hearts can hope for.
And I guess then, Andrew, just to finish on this point, is that enough? What Alex is saying is, would Hearts fans take that, like a first season where they can consolidate, maybe finish 8th or 9th, or are they thinking we need to bounce back, and the very least should be a top 6 finish?
Yeah, I think Neilson said himself he wanted top 4. To be fair, let's be honest, the Premiership is not a particularly great standard, so a pretty decent Hearts team could very well push for at least top 5 and go for a European spot. I mean, I don't think Livingston are a great team, and Livingston are in the top 6. St Johnstone have just won a trophy, and I don't think they're a particularly great team either. So
making friends here.
Exactly. Well, it's not Andrew Celtics on the podcast, it's just the other guy. So, I mean, Hearts, I think absolutely, considering the size of the club they are and the players they still have, they absolutely should be aiming for the top 5. As for the names that are kind of mentioned, I mean, Alex Neil, I think would be a perfectly fine choice. I don't really know where Alex Neil goes now after Preston. So if there's a chance of getting Alex Neil, by all means, yeah, go for it. Derek McInnes, I think Derek McInnes is an upgrade on what they've had. He's an upgrade on Robbie Neilson. He's an upgrade on Craig Levein. He's certainly better than Tynecastle. So Derek McInnes wouldn't be a bad appointment for Hearts, but every Hearts fan I spoke to says they don't want him, which isn't really, you don't want a manager coming in with support don't really want. But what he did for Aberdeen, he came in, won a trophy with Aberdeen, took Aberdeen to cup finals, took Aberdeen to Europe. If he did that for Hearts, then great. I think his problem with Aberdeen was he stayed far too long. But if he had the same success in his first 4 years at Aberdeen that he did, and he did that with Hearts, then by all means, would Hearts fans not take that? Other than that, look at what Aberdeen have done. Aberdeen have went and got a guy who's been coaching for 9 years. We've got what looks like a pretty exciting management team. Now, obviously, we've not kicked the ball into Stephen Glass yet, so who knows how successful it's going to be. But exactly, but it's something different, rather than just to kind of. I mean, fair enough. Tommy Wright's to get punted for every job. He's now in a job. We all know that Stefan, probably yourself, will be punting Stephen Robertson, but I just don't think that's an exciting appointment. I think Derek McInnes would be an exciting appointment. I think you want something that's just what they did, what they tried to do with Tynecastle and they got it badly wrong. What they tried to do with Stendhal, just somebody come in and give them something completely different and just get the fans a bit excited.
Fair enough. I think that's a good place to end it. Thanks very much, guys, for coming on the show. Just before I wrap things up, I would also recommend, I think you've read this, Andrew, I don't know if you have, Alex, but there was a piece, it must be a month or so, maybe longer, I've lost track of time, that James wrote on the website. It was a kind of mock jury for Robbie Neilson about whether he was actually a good manager or not. So it's quite an enjoyable piece. I actually read it before we came on here just to kind of refresh my mind and actually remind myself what conclusion James came to. I won't spoil it, but it's definitely worth a read. So if you go back a few pages on this Substack page, you'll find that. And there's also, as I said at the start of the podcast, lots of Scotland fallout, both in podcast and article form, so you can check it out as well. But we'll be back next Wednesday with the main show. We will see you then. Cheers.